sad thing about empires that are extremely powerful like we have been since 45 is that they usually go in a real bust. And you say, how could we go in a real bust? Well, there was a book written a few years ago about the 9 nations of North America. Texas featured prominently in that book because it was the leader of one of the 9 nations of North America. We think it can't happen. We think this country can't break up. I can tell you right now, I've been in the Deep South where I have listened to governors and legislative members who talk about leaving the Union. Generally, I say, well, to Alabama or Mississippi, I'll say, or my home state of South Carolina, I'll say, have you seen the stats on the GDP? You're a minus 4%. If it weren't for New York at a plus 30 and California at a plus 60, and the transfer of revenues from those 2 productive states to your state, you wouldn't exist. You'd be Bangladesh or worse. And they go, oh, where'd you get those figures? Here, give them to them. Show them the figures. That's the truth. That's how bad some of these states are doing economically. So, the idea they would leave is kind of preposterous. But then think about it for a minute and think about something like that book proposed some years ago, that there'd be these confluence of interests that would meld, and you'd have a Pacific Northwest state, and you'd have an East Coast state, you'd have a Deep South state, you'd have Texas, and so forth. And think about history and the motive forces thereof, and you realize that this last 1,000 years and this last 200 in particular have been especially stable. With all the wars and everything they've fought, they've still been especially stable. People would argue the last 1,000 years have been the last millennium has been incredibly conducive to the human race, which is why we've put more people on this planet since 1900 than we did in all the years prior.